The summer of 2020 was supposed to be my launchpad. I had just graduated at the top of my class from the University of Toronto with a degree in finance and a head full of ambition. After months of grueling interviews, I landed my dream offer, a junior analyst position at Astra Capital, a prestigious private equity firm on Bay Street. It wasn't just a job, it was the job, the gateway to the high-stakes world I had obsessed over since high school. My best friend since kindergarten. Sarah Jenkins was the first person I called. Sarah and I had done everything together, shared dorms, endured late-night study sessions, and dreamed of conquering the world from matching downtown apartments. Sarah was smart, but she'd had a tougher time securing a post-grad role, settling for an administrative assistant job at a small marketing agency. "Astra Capital, Mia, you actually did it!" Sarah screamed into the phone. "This is huge. We have to celebrate. My name is Mia Chen." I was elated. I immediately started sharing my interview preparation materials, my pitch decks, and the proprietary case study I had used to impress the hiring committee. I helped Sarah tweak her resume, thinking she might be able to land an entry-level role at one of Astra's competitors. That's what best friends do. The final step for Astra was a personalized 2-week trial run, where new hires completed a complex market analysis project. It was a formality, but a crucial one. I spent 2 weeks immersed in the data, working 16-hour days. During that time, Sarah was my constant sounding board. She'd bring me coffee, listen to me rant about complicated valuation models, and even review my presentation slides, offering surprising insights. "The merger model you built is flawless, Mia," she said one night, reviewing my laptop screen over takeout pizza. "The sensitivity analysis on the pharmaceutical stock, that's where you blow them away." I trusted her completely. I even let her use my personal login to the Astra internal data portal, the one had been temporarily assigned for the project, to show her how the firm structured its data. 2 days before my final presentation, I walked into the Astra offices, my analysis binders crisp, my confidence soaring. I was greeted by Mr. Harrison, the head of PE. His face was grim. "Mia, please step into my office. We need to talk." I sat down, bracing for a critique of my work. Instead, he slid a piece of paper across the mahogany desk. It was a termination notice. "We appreciate your time, Mia, but we have decided to go with another candidate. We wish you the best of luck." I was stunned. "But my project, the analysis, it was perfect. I met every parameter, Mr. Harrison. We received a project that was frankly superior to yours, Mia. It covered the exact same parameters, but it demonstrated a level of strategic foresight and data access that we simply can't ignore. We made the offer this morning." I left Astra Capital that day, utterly crushed, the termination notice feeling like a brand on my soul. The dream was dead. That evening, I called Sarah, sobbing. She rushed over, hugging me and swearing vengeance on the corporate world. "They're misogynistic dinosaurs, Mia. You are too good for them," she swore. She was the picture of sympathy. She spent the next 2 days with me, helping me apply for entry-level jobs, none of which were anywhere near the level of Astra. A week later, I saw a post on LinkedIn. Sarah Jenkins had updated her profile. New role, junior analyst at Astra Capital. The post featured a photo of her standing next to Mr. Harrison, smiling triumphantly, holding an Astra-branded coffee mug. The accompanying text read, "So thrilled to announce I've accepted my dream role at Astra Capital. Hard work and a relentless pursuit of data really pay off." I felt a dizzying coldness spread through me. The pieces slammed into place, the specific insights, the review of my slides, the unusual interest in the internal data structure, and the superior project. Sarah had used my login, my hard work, and my trust to complete a nearly identical, slightly optimized version of my project and steal my job. I didn't call her. I didn't send a message. I simply deleted her from every contact list and every social media platform. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was a character assassination delivered by my closest friend. In that moment, a new cold ambition was born. I didn't want a job anymore. I wanted power. I wanted a platform so high that I could look down and see Astra Capital and see Sarah in the dirt. 5 years later, September 2025, my office was no longer on Bay Street. It was in the sleek, minimalist high-rise of Synergy Ventures, the fastest-growing technology investment fund in the nation. I was Mia Chen, the third youngest managing partner in Synergy's history. I had spent 5 years climbing like a rocket, relentless, efficient, and fueled by the cold memory of betrayal. My salary was now a formidable 6 figures plus significant profit sharing. This morning, I was reviewing the final acquisition files for Synergy's largest takeover target to date, Astra Capital. The firm that had crushed my dreams was now my property. I flipped through the personnel files, the list of employees I would inherit, restructure, or terminate. My finger stopped at a name, Sarah Jenkins. Senior analyst. Salary $120,000. I paused, doing the quick math. My current base salary, excluding bonuses, was well over 5 times hers. "Marcus." I called, my voice dangerously steady, addressing my head of HR. "Is the Astra team relocation finalized?" "Yes, Miss Chen. The entire senior analyst team from Astra reports to the Synergy office this morning. Their first meeting is in 30 minutes. "Perfect," I said, a slow, cold smile forming on my lips. "I'll run the orientation myself. Make sure Ms. Jenkins is seated prominently in the front row. I want to personally introduce her to her new boss." The revenge I had nursed for 5 years was about to be realized, not with a harsh word, but with the full, unassailable weight of my success. The Synergy Ventures conference room was a monument to modern finance, glass walls, minimalist aesthetic, and a massive 4K screen projecting the sleek gold and black Synergy logo. The air conditioning hummed, but the atmosphere was thick with the silent anxiety of the newly acquired. I stood at the head of the room, waiting. My suit was tailored to perfection, and my demeanor was one of cold, unassailable authority. I was no longer the desperate graduate. I was the managing partner who had just bought their entire division. Marcus, my head of HR, finished checking the roster. "They're all here, Ms. Chen, the senior analyst team from Astra Capital." I nodded. "Let them in." The Astra team filed in, looking shell-shocked. They took their seats around the huge conference table. I scanned the room, locating my target instantly. Sarah Jenkins was in the front row, looking 5 years older and far more stressed than her LinkedIn photos suggested. She was talking quietly to the man next to her, completely unaware that her former best friend, the person she had betrayed to get the job, was about to walk in. I waited a moment longer, savoring the silence. Then I entered the room. The chatter immediately ceased. All eyes snapped to me. Sarah, mid-sentence, finally turned her head. Her eyes went wide with shock. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly white. She didn't just recognize me. The realization of who I was now and what I represented hit her with the force of a physical blow. She tried to speak, but only a dry rattling sound escaped her throat. I walked to the podium, letting my eyes sweep over the team before finally resting on Sarah. I gave her no recognition, no nod of shared history, just the blank professional gaze of a CEO evaluating an asset. "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and carrying. "I am Mia Chen, managing partner at Synergy Ventures. I led the acquisition of Astra Capital, and I will be overseeing the integration of your team." I didn't stop to let the information sink in. I launched straight into the hard truth of the merger. "Many of you are concerned about your future. Let me be clear. Synergy does not buy mediocrity. We acquired Astra for its client portfolio, not necessarily its personnel. Over the next 6 weeks, your roles will be under deep scrutiny. Your performance will be judged by Synergy's standards that are significantly higher than what you've become accustomed to." I pointed to the massive screen which now displayed my corporate bio. The key information was bolded: MP Synergy Ventures. Age 27, acquired Astra Capital for $850. I then addressed the team's salary concerns, hitting Sarah directly without ever naming her. "I understand that the senior analyst compensation package at Astra was approximately $120,000 annually. You may find it reassuring that the compensation for this level of performance at Synergy is significantly higher. For perspective, my current base salary is 5 times what your previous firm paid its top analysts." I paused, letting the staggering salary differential hang in the air. The message was clear: the job she stole had led to a glass ceiling, while the betrayal had propelled me to the penthouse. I picked up a tablet and flipped through the personnel files, stopping at Sarah's. "I need to discuss the structure of the new team," I continued. "Under the Synergy system, all acquired analysts will report directly to a team lead, Ms. Jenkins." Sarah flinched, her body freezing in the chair. "Sarah, for the duration of the integration period, you will be assigned to a highly specialized low-level data entry task. You will be responsible for manually porting all of Astra's legacy financial documents into the Synergy proprietary cloud platform. This task is critical for compliance, but it is purely administrative and highly tedious." The task was a profound insult to a former senior analyst reduced to data entry. It was the lowest paid, most mind-numbing job in the division. "You will report directly to Mr. Ethan Cole, our newest junior analyst," I stated, gesturing to a young man sitting at the side of the room. Ethan, who was barely 2 years out of college, was now Sarah's direct supervisor. Sarah finally found her voice thin and strained. Ms. Chen, this seems like a highly inefficient use of a senior analyst's time. I have a background in advanced merger modeling." I fixed her with a gaze that held 5 years of cold fury and zero pity. "Ms. Jenkins," I replied, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "Your resume references a relentless pursuit of data and attention to detail as your core strengths. This task demands exactly that. If you cannot demonstrate basic administrative competence, you certainly will not be trusted with advanced modeling." I put the tablet down, signaling the end of the exchange. The other analysts avoided looking at Sarah, realizing instantly that a toxic history existed between us. "The integration period begins now," I announced, returning to the team at large. "Mr. Cole will assign your first tasks. Welcome to Synergy. You are dismissed." As the analysts filed out, Sarah remained seated, her face pale, the realization of her new humbling reality settling over her. I approached her chair. She finally looked up, her eyes wide with fear and a flicker of the old shame. "Mia," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why are you doing this? I know I messed up, but this is cruel." "Cruel," I countered, leaning down so only she could hear me. "Cruel was letting me cry on your shoulder for a week while you were signing the contract for the job you stole from me. Cruel was using my own hard work to climb a rung you didn't earn." I straightened up, towering over her. "This isn't cruel, Sarah. This is compensation. You will perform the tedious basic work you should have been doing 5 years ago, and you will do it under the direct supervision of the firm you failed to get into. Now get to your desk. You have 30 minutes until your first deadline." I left her sitting there alone in the conference room. The initial revenge was complete. The architect of my shame was now my lowest-ranking subordinate. The administrative task I assigned to Sarah, porting Astra's legacy data, was designed to be tedious, not impossible. It required methodical patience and basic software competency. However, it was also the furthest thing from the high-level financial modeling Sarah claimed to specialize in. 2 days after the orientation, Marcus brought me an update. "Ms. Chen, Ethan Cole reports that Ms. Jenkins is struggling with the data migration. She's falling behind the schedule by a significant margin. She claims the proprietary Synergy platform is too clunky for the scale of the legacy files." "Clunky?" I repeated, a dry smile touching my lips. "The Synergy platform is the industry gold standard. It sounds like she's used to using spreadsheets, not integrated systems." Exactly, Marcus confirmed. She requested a meeting with you, Ms. Chen. She claims she needs clarification on the underlying data structures to proceed. I knew what this was. Sarah wasn't asking for technical clarification. She was asking for a lifeline, hoping I would take pity on her and assign her to a more dignified project. She was trying to reestablish a dialogue, if only to save face. Schedule her meeting, I instructed, but make it brief, 10 minutes. I want to see if she can still talk her way out of a problem. Sarah arrived promptly at 4:00 p.m. She looked exhausted. Her eyes darted around my expansive office. At the high-tech terminal, the financial awards displayed discreetly and the panoramic view that symbolized my ascent. "Thank you for seeing me, Mia," she said, using my first name, cautiously testing the boundary. I didn't acknowledge the familiarity. "It's Ms. Chen, Sarah. Time is short. What is the precise nature of the migration problem?" She launched into a practiced explanation using corporate jargon designed to mask her actual lack of progress. "The issue is that the legacy files contain numerous misallocated expenditure data points tied to Series B funding rounds from 2018. To ensure compliance, I need the internal accounting logic Astra used to categorize those specific allocations. Without that, the data integrity will be compromised." It was a beautiful bluff. She was trying to frame her failure as a deep ethical concern for data integrity. I picked up a pen and flipped open a clean notepad. "The 2018 Series B funding," I stated, tapping the pen. "That was the major venture capital investment in the biotech firm Nexagen. You're concerned about misallocated expenditure. Let's assume you're right." I slid the notepad and pen across the table. "You spent 5 years at Astra, Sarah. You claim to be a senior analyst. Don't tell me about data integrity. Show me the analytical model." I leaned back, giving her my full attention. The Nexagen Series B funding was $25 million. The projected exit revenue was $180 million achieved within 4 years. The misallocated expenditure in question pertains to the 7% dollar margin allocated to deferred interest options, which should have been categorized as long-term liability. "Tell me, what is the adjusted net present value NPV of that investment, assuming a revised deferred interest rate of $5, 5% and a discount rate of 12%?" The question was designed to be instantly solvable for any actual senior analyst. It required basic, quick calculations involving discounting cash flows, the kind of rapid analytical work you do instinctively in high-stakes finance. Sarah froze. Her face went blank. The confidence she projected moments before evaporated. She picked up the pen, looked at the numbers, and then her hand started to tremble. I don't have my calculator," she stammered, scrambling for an excuse. "You don't need a calculator, Sarah," I replied, my voice hard with disappointment. "You need the fundamental skills you claim to possess. Any senior analyst should be able to sketch out the formula and estimate the range of the NPV within 30 seconds. She put the pen down, defeated. "I haven't done that kind of modeling in a long time, Ms. Chen. My role at Astra shifted heavily toward client liaison." The truth, ugly and undeniable, was out. The job she stole from me, the one that required relentless analytical modeling, she had clearly been avoiding for the past 5 years, coasting on charm and the title she didn't earn. She was an imposter. "Your client liaison role at Astra was built on the foundation of my analysis, Sarah," I said, rising from my seat. "The reason you cannot answer this question is because you never learned the core principles required for the job you acquired through fraud." I picked up the notepad, tore the paper off, and dropped it into the wastebasket. "You have 2 options, Sarah. You can continue to fail at the administrative work, proving you are incapable of even the simplest task, and be immediately terminated. Or you can swallow your pride, stop asking for favors, and dedicate yourself to mastering the basic data entry that your current salary grade demands." I walked her to the door, placing a hand on the cool metal handle. "You were hired for your relentless pursuit of data, Sarah. I suggest you start relentlessly pursuing the data on your desk. The next time you come to me, come with solutions, not excuses. And remember, you report to Mr. Cole." I opened the door and watched her walk away, defeated. The emotional satisfaction of the confrontation was immense, but it was quickly replaced by a cold strategic insight. Sarah was weak, professionally insecure, and desperate. This made her a profound liability, not just to Synergy, but potentially to my reputation. I called Marcus immediately. "Marcus, I need you to initiate a deeper private audit of Sarah Jenkins' entire 5-year employment history at Astra. I want to know exactly what she was doing. I have a suspicion that the job she stole was a role she never truly performed." The professional revenge was delicious, but now I needed to ensure her past mistakes wouldn't contaminate my future. The internal audit I ordered was swift and deep. Synergy Ventures now owned Astra Capital's entire digital history, and I intended to use every bite. Marcus, initially hesitant about the deep dive into a single analyst's past, quickly realized the strategic necessity of the investigation. 2 days later, Marcus delivered the results in a thick, redacted file. "The findings are significant, Ms. Chen." Marcus began, his voice lowered even in the privacy of my office. "Sarah Jenkins was, as you suspected, an underperformer, but the failure wasn't just poor analysis, it was non-performance." He pointed to a section of the file detailing the 2023 Q3 earnings report. This report, credited to Sarah, shows a catastrophic miscalculation in the valuation of a key European asset. The error was so glaring that it should have caused a major client withdrawal. But it didn't. I finished remembering the market headlines from that time. Astra managed to spin that quarter as merely challenging. How did they cover it? Marcus flipped to a page detailing internal communications. The error was caught not by Sarah, but by a junior intern who was immediately fired. The final corrected report was signed off and personally approved by Mr. Harrison, the head of PE, and released with Sarah's name attached. My stomach tightened. Mr. Harrison, the man who had crushed my dreams and then hired Sarah, had not only protected her, but had actively risked the firm's credibility to cover her mistakes. Why Marcus? Why would Mr. Harrison, a partner obsessed with prestige, risk his reputation for a mediocre analyst? Marcus hesitated. This is where the trail turned sensitive, Ms. Chen. We ran a forensic audit on his travel and expense reports, which we now control. From late 2020 through early 2024, Sarah Jenkins was listed as his primary travel assistant for all confidential client meetings that often coincided with luxury resorts and high-end restaurants not typical for client dinners. The implication was clear, ugly, and entirely plausible. Sarah hadn't just coasted. She had leveraged a personal relationship with Mr. Harrison to protect her stolen job. The job I was perfectly qualified for, she had maintained through calculated, unethical means. Mr. Harrison didn't hire the best analyst. He hired the most compliant one. I summarized the cold fury returning. He hired the person who wouldn't challenge him, and then he covered her failures to maintain the relationship. The knowledge changed everything. My revenge was no longer just professional vindication. It was the opportunity to clean up a fundamental ethical rot within the organization I had just purchased. Mr. Harrison was still employed, a highly paid liability I had inherited. I called Mr. Harrison into my office immediately. He arrived looking confident, clearly believing the transition would maintain his senior status. Mia, or should I say Ms. Chen, he greeted me with a forced patronizing smile. I was just drafting a strategy for the seamless transfer of our key accounts. I'm ready to continue leading the PE division. I gestured to the chair, not offering my hand. I placed the redacted file neatly on the desk between us. We have reviewed the entirety of Astra's internal operations, Mr. Harrison. I began, my voice even. Specifically, the personnel decisions and compliance failures from the past 5 years. He paled slightly but maintained his composure. I stand by my leadership. Astra's success speaks for itself. Astra's near failures speak louder. I countered, tapping the file. Let's discuss the 2023 Q3 European Asset Valuation Report. The $40 million error that was signed off and approved by you, Mr. Harrison, despite clear evidence of failure from the analyst credited with the work. He shifted nervously. That was a high-pressure situation. We corrected the error internally, no public exposure. The public exposure is irrelevant, I pressed, leaning forward. The ethical breach is not. You knowingly signed off on fraudulent data, dismissed the junior employee who found the mistake, and protected the analyst responsible. I looked him directly in the eye. And that analyst, Mr. Harrison, was Sarah Jenkins. The same Ms. Jenkins who was hired immediately after replacing the original candidate who completed the superior analysis, which incidentally was mine. His confidence finally broke. The smooth, practiced mask of the executive dissolved into genuine fear. He knew I had him cornered. What are you implying, Ms. Chen? He stammered. I'm implying that Synergy Ventures does not tolerate a management team that trades ethical compliance for personal favors. The failure to address that $40 million error is a breach of fiduciary duty that could void the entire acquisition agreement if exposed to the board. I slid the file across the desk to him, focusing his attention on the redacted travel and expense reports, the evidence of his relationship with Sarah. You have two options, Mr. Harrison. You can accept immediate termination for cause, which will involve a legal and public investigation into the 2023 Q3 report and your compliance failures. I slid over a second, much thinner document. Or you can accept a non-compete and confidentiality agreement stating that you voluntarily resign effective immediately, citing personal reasons. You walk away with a small severance, and Synergy guarantees absolute confidentiality regarding the findings of this audit. He stared at the document, sweat beading on his forehead. The choice was between total professional destruction and a quiet, if humiliating, exit. You're doing this because of Mia Chen, the graduate who lost the job, aren't you? He whispered, his voice laced with realization. No, Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice ice cold. I am doing this because I am Mia Chen, managing partner of Synergy Ventures, and I refuse to inherit a toxic culture built on incompetence and deceit. He signed the resignation papers immediately. My revenge on Astra's broken system was complete. I stood up, signaling the end of his career. You have 30 minutes to clear your desk, Mr. Harrison. I suggest you advise Ms. Jenkins to focus entirely on her data entry. Her tenure here is about to become very dependent on her ability to perform under extreme scrutiny. I had eliminated the architect of my initial betrayal. Now only Sarah remained utterly unprotected and exposed. The ultimate act of professional justice was about to be served. With Mr. Harrison's swift, quiet exit, the ethical rot within the Astra acquisition was purged. Sarah Jenkins was now utterly exposed, reporting directly to an ambitious junior analyst with no one to shield her from the consequences of her non-performance. I let her flounder for 2 more days. Ethan Cole, her new supervisor, reported consistent failures in her basic data migration tasks. She was making careless mistakes, missing critical fields, and her production rate was the lowest on the team. She was proving beyond a doubt that she lacked the fundamental discipline for the job she had stolen. I called Marcus. Schedule a private meeting with Ms. Jenkins for tomorrow morning. No lawyers, no witnesses, just her and me. Sarah arrived in my office the next morning looking frantic. She knew something was wrong. The palpable shift in the office atmosphere since Mr. Harrison's sudden departure had terrified her. She was clutching a presentation folder, a transparent attempt to appear busy and competent. Ms. Chen. She began, attempting to sound professional. I've compiled a brief analysis of the acquisition's immediate financial synergies. I think my modeling expertise could be better utilized in the integration planning. I raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Put the folder down, Sarah. That won't be necessary. She obeyed, her expression turning immediately defensive. We aren't here to discuss synergy reports. We are here to discuss your employment with Synergy Ventures and your past performance at Astra Capital. I didn't launch an accusation. I presented her with evidence. I opened the large monitor behind my desk and displayed a single highly detailed slide titled Personnel Review, Sarah Jenkins, Senior Analyst, 2020-2025. The slide was split into 3 sections designed to deliver maximum professional and personal impact. Section 1, the theft. The first graph showed a comparison between my final analysis project for Astra labeled Candidate A and Sarah's final project labeled Candidate B. The data streams, the specific stock picks, and the analytical approach were visually identical with only minor formatting changes. In June 2020, I stated my voice measured and low. You gained access to my proprietary work, copied the methodology, and optimized the presentation to secure the junior analyst position. You stole the job I earned. Sarah tried to object, her hands flying up. I helped you, Mia. We worked together. It was collaboration. Collaboration is mutual, Sarah. Deceit is unilateral. You betrayed my trust, and you built your entire career on a lie. Section 2, the failure. The second section displayed the audit findings, the 2023 Q3 European asset valuation. I didn't display the full complex data, only the simple, devastating facts. Error magnitude, $40 million miscalculation. Discovery junior intern later terminated. Action taken report signed off as correct by PE. Oh head, Mr. Harrison. For 5 years you were a liability, not an asset. I continued. You didn't perform the work. You were a protected employee whose mistakes were covered up by a manager who failed his ethical duty. This pattern of incompetence is precisely why your work rate on the basic data migration is currently failing the standard of an entry-level intern. Her face was ashen. The shame of her professional fraud was now laid bare. Section 3, the compensation. The final section of the slide was the simplest and the most devastating. It showed 3 numbers. Your 2024 Astra salary, $120,000. My current base salary, $600,000 plus 5x. Severance offered $60,000. You stole the bottom rung of the ladder, Sarah, and you spent 5 years clinging to it, terrified of being exposed. I stated, walking around the desk to stand opposite her. The very act of betrayal that secured your initial job was the fuel that propelled my career beyond anything you could ever have achieved. I leaned in, meeting her watery gaze. The difference between us is not just skill, it's integrity. You used deceit to gain $120,000, and I used hard work to gain 5 times that. You are not equipped for Synergy Ventures. I placed the termination papers on the desk. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. You are receiving a severance payment equivalent to 6 months of your Astra salary. This is not out of kindness, it is an economic non-compete. It is compensation for you to leave this industry entirely. Sarah finally broke down, the tears streaming down her face. Please, Mia, don't do this. I have bills, I have rent. I'll take any job, I'll do the data entry. You have a $60,000 severance, Sarah, I interrupted coldly. You have 6 months to transition out of finance. I want you to take that time and ask yourself what you are actually good at, because it is not analysis and it is certainly not ethical management. I paused, delivering the final crushing judgmental reference to her desperate email 5 years prior. You said that hard work and a relentless pursuit of data pay off. You were right. My hard work led me here. Your deceit led you to this desk where you now face the consequences of stealing the one job you were completely unqualified for. I pressed the intercom button. Marcus, please escort Ms. Jenkins from the premises. Her Synergy access has been revoked. As Marcus gently led a weeping, defeated Sarah out of my office, I felt a deep, profound release. The final act of professional revenge was complete. The bitterness was gone. I sat back down, looked at the empty desk, and closed the file on Astra Capital and Sarah Jenkins for good. The fight was over. Now the real work, the work of building a life unburdened by the past, could begin. The firing of Sarah Jenkins felt less like a celebration and more like the end of a long, arduous construction project. The moment she left, escorted out of the Synergy high-rise, the air in my office felt lighter, but also strangely quiet. The adrenaline of the rivalry, the very energy that had powered my entire career ascent, was gone. I had achieved financial and professional dominance. My salary was 5 times hers. I owned her former company, and I had neutralized her career. Yet sitting alone in my expansive office, I felt a deep, unnerving emptiness. The years of hyper-focus on ascent had left my personal life desolate. I was a managing partner at 27, but my social circle consisted almost entirely of Marcus and Rebecca employees who admired me, but who were constrained by professional boundaries. I realized that the ambition fueled by betrayal had created a fortress around me, and now that the enemy was vanquished, I was trapped inside. My therapist, whom I had started seeing 6 months prior to the Astra acquisition, had repeatedly warned me about this exact moment. Revenge is a powerful engine, Mia, but it burns too hot and leaves toxic residue. When you win, you won't feel happy. You'll feel empty because you built your success on someone else's failure, not on your own joy. I took a mandatory 3-day weekend, something I hadn't done since college, and tried to reconnect with the person I was before the betrayal. I opened my old contacts list, skipping over any name associated with Bay Street or Astra. I found the number for Elena Rodriguez, a former college friend with whom I had lost touch. Elena was a graphic designer far removed from the cold world of finance. I sent a hesitant text. Elena, it's Mia Chen. Long shot, but would you be interested in catching up this weekend? Elena and I met at a small, noisy cafe downtown. I arrived in tailored silk and she arrived in comfortable jeans covered in bright paint smudges. The conversation was awkward at first. Elena brought up shared memories of dorm life, cheap ramen, and silly inside jokes. I kept steering the conversation back to Synergy's Q4 projections. God, Mia! Elena finally laughed, setting down her coffee mug. It's like you're pitching me an investment opportunity. Slow down. Tell me something real. What do you do when you're not acquiring multi-million-dollar firms? I stammered, genuinely lost. I review market trends. I fly to New York. I read compliance reports. No, I mean for fun. Elena pressed. The silence stretched. The truth was, I didn't have fun. My only hobby was reading financial periodicals. My life was work in the cold, relentless pursuit of professional dominance. I ended up confessing the truth of the last 5 years, the betrayal, the intense focus, the ascent, and the final crushing moment of firing Sarah. Elena listened patiently. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy or congratulations. She offered perspective. Mia, look. Sarah was a terrible friend and an unethical coworker. What she did was unforgivable. But you let her define your path for 5 years. You focused all that incredible energy, which should have been dedicated to innovation and joy, on one small petty target. You won the war, but you didn't conquer your own life. Her honesty was brutal and exactly what I needed. So what do I do now? I asked. Stop building walls. Start building bridges, Elena suggested. Go back to what you loved before Bay Street turned you into a shark. Remember that financial literacy program you wanted to start in college? Elena's words resonated deeply. I returned to Synergy on Monday with a renewed, purified sense of purpose. The goal was no longer to outperform Sarah. It was to use my capital and influence to make a positive impact. I called Marcus and Rebecca into my office, laying out a new initiative. Synergy Ventures is launching the Ignition Fund, I announced. It will be a nonprofit arm of the firm dedicated to providing seed funding and mentorship to women and minority-led tech startups. We'll use our expertise to build capital not just for ourselves, but for genuine ethical innovators. I looked at Marcus. I want Elena Rodriguez heading up the communications design for this, and I want you, Rebecca, to allocate 5% of our next quarter's profit share directly to this fund. The initiative was met with genuine excitement. It felt exhilarating, the pure joy of creation unburdened by spite. The change wasn't just professional. That evening, I bought a small, beautiful condo in a lively neighborhood far from the cold silence of my old luxury apartment. I bought a piano, an instrument I hadn't touched since childhood, and started relearning old scales. The final piece of closure came 2 months later in the form of a formal letter from Sarah's lawyer. It was short and to the point. Ms. Jenkins accepts the severance terms and will not pursue any further action. She has relocated and is pursuing new career options outside of the financial sector. Sarah was gone permanently out of my life and out of my industry. The chapter was closed. I sat at my new piano, my fingers finding the hesitant notes of an old sonata. The music was rusty, but the feeling was real. I had destroyed the one person who tried to destroy me, but in doing so, I had finally rebuilt the most important structure of all my own life. The launch of the Ignition Fund marked the true beginning of my new professional life. It was a stark contrast to the cutthroat acquisitions of Synergy, offering me a platform to use my analytical skills for creation, not destruction. My role as a mentor within the fund became the most rewarding part of my week. I worked closely with brilliant, driven young women who reminded me of my 15-year-old self, full of ambition, but crucially lacking the ethical blind spots that had plagued Astra. One of my mentees was Ava Sharma, a 22-year-old coding prodigy who had developed a secure, decentralized lending platform aimed at small businesses. Her financial model was complex, but her purpose was pure: to democratize capital. During a late-night session, I was reviewing Ava's pitch deck. She had built a perfect model, but her presentation lacked the aggressive confidence needed to secure major funding. Ava, your numbers are flawless, I said, leaning back. But your presentation is too polite. You need to stop asking for a seat at the table and start demanding the whole damn room. Ava looked nervous. I don't want to come across as a jerk, Mia. You won't, I countered. Confidence is not cruelty. Cruelty is what Sarah Jenkins did, stealing someone else's work. Confidence is knowing your value and refusing to let anyone diminish it. I found myself opening up to Ava, sharing the story of the betrayal, not as a painful memory, but as a cautionary tale about the ethics of ambition. Sarah taught me a valuable lesson, I explained. The person who lacks integrity will always rely on shortcuts. The person who truly excels invests in their own foundation. Never compromise your ethics for a quick win, Ava, because if your foundation is shaky, your entire empire will eventually fall. Ava absorbed the lesson, and in her next pitch to Synergy's investment committee, she was formidable. She didn't just impress the team, she commanded them. The success of the Ignition Fund quickly became the most profitable venture for Synergy, measured not in dollars, but in reputation and future potential. The ethical, innovative startups we were nurturing were the future of the market, and investors were eager to align themselves with Synergy's positive image. My focus shift, however, created tension with the core acquisition team. Rebecca, the COO, respected the strategy, but worried about the distraction. Mia, the Ignition Fund is incredible, but we have a major acquisition pending in London, a firm twice the size of Astra. We need you on the ground utilizing your aggressive negotiation skills. You've been spending more time vetting pitch decks than closing major deals. The London deal can wait, Rebecca, I replied, my voice calm. The market has shifted. The future of Synergy is not about acquiring broken old firms. It's about investing in the next generation of ethical tech. I'm focusing on the build, not the buy. Rebecca looked frustrated. But that's not the managing partner role, Mia. That's the role of a philanthropist. Then perhaps the role needs to change, I mused. I realized that the role of managing partner, the one I had fought 5 years to achieve, no longer fit. It was a position defined by the competition and conquest of the past. My purpose was now defined by creation and mentorship. I called Alex, the friend I had made during my darkest hour, who now worked at the local community center. I need your help designing a new space, I told him. I'm purchasing the top floor of the Synergy building. I want to build a state-of-the-art co-working and mentorship center for the Ignition Fund, a space entirely separate from the main firm. The final symbolic act of closure came on a rainy Tuesday. I was cleaning out my old luxury apartment, preparing to move into the new, warmer condo I had purchased in the neighborhood Elena lived in. I found a small box labeled Astra. Inside were the few physical remnants of the betrayal, the termination letter, the notes I had prepared for my interview, and a small gold-plated pen Sarah had given me as a good luck gift before I started the job she intended to steal. I picked up the pen. It represented the final toxic residue of the past. I didn't throw it away. I drove to the nearest high school that housed an engineering program. I walked into the shop classroom and found the teacher. My name is Mia Chen. I run Synergy Ventures. I introduced myself. I'd like to fund a small scholarship here specifically for a student who demonstrates ethical leadership alongside technical skill. I handed the teacher the gold-plated pen. This pen writes very well. Please give it to the first student who demonstrates integrity over shortcuts. Tell them it's a reminder that true success is built on an honest foundation. As I left the school, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt since I was 22. I had turned the symbol of my betrayal into the seed of another student's honest future. I returned to Synergy and drafted the final documents. I was stepping down as managing partner, a position I had held for 2 years, and transitioning into the role of Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer (CISO), exclusively overseeing the Ignition Fund and Synergy's ethical investment strategy. I was trading the highest-ranking title for the highest-purpose role. I was trading the salary that was 5 times Sarah's for a career that was 5 times more meaningful. The revenge was complete, and the bitterness was gone. The only thing left to build was my own future. The transition was immediate and profound. Marcus stepped up as CEO, and Rebecca embraced the COO role with fierce determination. My move to Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer (CISO) was met with relief by the core team. They wanted their leader focused on the bottom line, and I wanted my focus entirely on growth and ethics. My office was moved, not down the hall, but to the newly acquired top floor, the future home of the Ignition Fund Innovation Center. The space was deliberately designed to feel collaborative and open a stark contrast to the closed-door intensity of the main Synergy floor. My first act as CISO was to launch the Ignition Fund's flagship initiative, the grand opening of the Innovation Center. The event was held 2 weeks later. The room was packed with venture capitalists, tech media, and the diverse group of young entrepreneurs we were backing. Elena, my old friend, was the lead designer for the center, and the space pulsed with vibrant color and energy. I stood on stage no longer speaking about quarterly reports, but about purpose. 5 years ago, I learned that success in this industry can be fleeting, and trust can be a dangerous commodity. I addressed the audience looking directly at the young mentees. I learned that the easiest path to the top is often paved with compromises, but those compromises always lead to a weaker foundation. I smiled, gesturing to the room full of innovators. The Ignition Fund exists because Synergy Ventures recognizes that the most valuable capital is integrity. We are here to fund the next generation of leaders who understand that true innovation requires not just talent, but honesty. I introduced Ava Sharma, whose decentralized lending platform had just received its first major round of funding. Ava, now commanding and articulate, delivered a flawless presentation. She was the proof that my new mission was working. The most unexpected visitor arrived during the reception, Mr. Harrison. He was clean-shaven and wore a nondescript suit, no longer carrying the arrogance of a PE head but the humility of a man rebuilding his life. He was now working as a senior business consultant for a nonprofit focusing on ethical governance, a quiet career funded by the severance I had granted him. He approached me hesitant but direct. "Mia," he said quietly, "I want you to know the work you are doing here, it's remarkable. You've turned that anger into something genuinely good." "I turned the knowledge of corruption into a structure for ethics, Mr. Harrison," I corrected gently. "I cleaned up the mess I inherited." He nodded, accepting the distinction. "Sarah, I hear she's teaching marketing at a local community college now." I paused. Sarah, the woman who had only been concerned with the title of senior analyst and a 6-figure salary, was now in education, a job that required genuine interpersonal skill and community focus, not cutthroat analysis. It was a form of justice I hadn't planned. She had been forced into a career where she could no longer hide her incompetence behind financial jargon. "She is out of the financial sector, which was the goal," I confirmed. "I wish her well." The final vestiges of the rivalry had dissolved. I realized I no longer hated Sarah. I simply pitied the choices she made. My success was no longer defined by her failure, but by my freedom from her shadow. My personal life reflected the same shift from conquest to construction. I was spending my weekends working on my new condo, which was quickly becoming a sanctuary. One evening, Alex, the friend who had helped me find my way back, came over for dinner. We sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "You're different now, Mia," Alex observed, resting his hand over mine. "When I first met you, you were always tense, ready for a fight. Now you actually look like you're enjoying your success." "I am," I admitted. "I built the empire to prove them wrong. Now I'm using the empire to build the world I want to live in." I looked at him, realizing the strength of the bond we had forged, a bond built on shared vulnerability and mutual respect, not the shallow ambition I had shared with Sarah. "I need to ask you something, Alex," I began, my voice filled with a quiet certainty. "I have the power, the security, and the freedom I fought for. But the greatest asset I've built is this connection with you. Will you leave the chaos of the city and move to the suburbs with me? I want to build a life, a real one, where my biggest focus isn't on the next acquisition, but on the next dinner with you." Alex's smile was immediate and genuine. "You don't need to acquire me, Mia. I've been ready to sign that contract for months. The best project you'll ever launch is the one for yourself." He sealed the deal with a kiss, a foundation stronger than any I had ever modeled in a spreadsheet. My revenge was complete. The past was closed. I had conquered the financial world, fired my betrayer, and now I was finally ready to conquer my own happiness. My new role as CISO was rewarding, but the final structural element of my revenge remained incomplete: Astra Capital. While Synergy Ventures owned the assets, the name Astra still lingered on legacy documents, a ghost of the firm that had rejected me. My goal was to completely erase that chapter from Synergy's future. I called Marcus, the new CEO, into the Ignition Fund Innovation Center, a space that now represented my complete shift in purpose. "Marcus, I have the final strategic directive for the Astra integration," I said, displaying a single slide on the massive screen. "The transition has been successful, the clients are retained, and the toxic elements are gone. But the rebranding is still phased," Marcus noted. "We still use Astra for some legacy communications." "That stops now," I confirmed. "I want a complete, immediate legal dissolution and corporate absorption of the Astra Capital entity. The name, the logo, and all internal systems must be purged from Synergy's network within 90 days. Astra Capital ceases to exist." Marcus looked impressed. "That's aggressive, Mia. It cuts short the tax advantages of a phased integration." "But you—" "The long-term tax advantage is irrelevant compared to the long-term ethical advantage," I countered. "Astra represents old, opaque, and unethical finance. Synergy must be entirely defined by its future, by the Ignition Fund's mission. I want zero contamination from the past." Marcus, a man who understood efficiency and my absolute clarity of vision, nodded immediately. "Consider it done, CISO Chen. Astra Capital is now officially a footnote in Synergy Ventures history." The erasure of Astra felt like a cleansing fire. As the name was systematically scrubbed from letterheads and databases, I felt the final minute residues of my 5-year-long bitterness disappear. The transition also allowed me to finally confront the cost of my ambition. While I was financially secure, I had neglected my health and my personal well-being, pushing myself beyond human limits. My therapist had challenged me. "You proved you can work harder than anyone, Mia. Now prove you can live better than anyone." I took that challenge literally. I structured my CISO role with firm, non-negotiable boundaries. No meetings before 9 a.m., no calls after 5 p.m., and every Friday dedicated solely to personal development and external mentorship. This structure allowed me to focus on my new home with Alex. We found a small, charming property with a large, messy garden that needed intensive care. I traded my financial spreadsheets for gardening books, learning the patience of growing things. A stark contrast to the aggressive speed of venture capital. One afternoon, I was covered in dirt, struggling to prune an overgrown rosebush. Alex came up behind me laughing and gently took the shears. "You're trying to conquer that rosebush like a hostile takeover, Mia," he teased. "You can't force growth. You have to nurture it, and sometimes you have to let go of the parts that aren't serving the health of the whole." His words struck me with the force of a market crash analysis. He wasn't just talking about gardening, he was talking about my life. "I spent 5 years trying to conquer Sarah and Astra," I admitted, leaning against the fence. "I wasted so much energy on the parts that weren't serving my growth." "But you learned the most important lesson," Alex said, helping me wipe the dirt from my hands. "You learned that your skill isn't in destroying things, it's in building them, whether it's an ethical fund, a strong team, or a healthy garden." The ultimate test of my emotional progress came unexpectedly. While reviewing Ignition Fund grant applications, I came across an application from a nonprofit focusing on providing mentorship to young women entering trades. A great mission, but the application was poorly formatted and lacking crucial financial details. The applicant's contact information was listed as Community College Marketing Department. I knew. My heart didn't race. It felt heavy, carrying the weight of the past. I called the number, identifying myself as Mia Chen, CISO of Synergy Ventures, and asking to speak to the point person for the grant application. A few seconds later, a familiar, slightly nervous voice answered. "Sarah Jenkins." "Hello, this is Sarah Jenkins. How can I help you?" she asked, her voice professional but subdued. "Sarah, this is Mia Chen." I stated, my voice calm and entirely businesslike. "I am reviewing your nonprofit grant application for the Ignition Fund." There was a long silence on the line. I could almost visualize the cold dread settling over her. "Ms. Chen," she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper, "your nonprofit's mission is strong, Sarah." I continued, cutting straight to the professional critique. "But the financial modeling in your application is sloppy. You've miscalculated the operating expenses and underestimated the long-term capital required. This application is heading for rejection based on non-compliance. I paused, delivering the final decisive lesson. This was not about revenge. It was about professional mentorship. I am not rejecting you, Sarah, I said firmly. I am sending you the exact synergy template you need to properly structure this application. You have 48 hours to resubmit it with accurate data. If you truly believe in your mission, you will do the hard work required to prove its value. This is your last chance to earn this funding. I hung up, not waiting for her response. I had given her the opportunity. She never gave me a fair shot based on honest work and a clear ethical model. I wasn't funding her out of pity, but out of the strategic belief in her organization's mission. The penance was over. I looked at my desk, cleared of all files, and smiled. The conquest was complete. The true legacy of Mia Chen was not the millions she earned, but the healthy ethical future she was building for herself and others. 48 hours after my call with Sarah Marcus informed me that the nonprofit grant application had been successfully resubmitted. It was perfect, Mia, he said, reviewing the final numbers. The financial modeling was crisp, professional, and entirely compliant. She fixed every error. She did the work, I acknowledged. Approve the grant immediately, Marcus. Send a personal note welcoming her nonprofit to the Ignition Fund. Her mission is sound. The final professional thread connecting me to Sarah Jenkins was tied off with an act of ethical investment. I had given her the chance to succeed on integrity, and she had taken it. The circle was closed. A year passed. My life was defined by the beautiful balance I had fought for. Synergy Ventures under Marcus's leadership was thriving, its reputation soaring thanks to the ethical standards I had installed. The Ignition Fund had become a national model, pouring capital into diverse ethical startups. My role as CISO was rewarding, allowing me to focus on macro strategy and mentorship, the parts of finance I genuinely loved. My new home with Alex was complete. It wasn't built for show, it was built for comfort, filled with books, Alex's art supplies, and my newly rediscovered piano. One Saturday afternoon, I was at home wearing old, comfortable clothes, installing a simple, custom-designed bookshelf in the living room. Alex was out running errands. I struggled with a heavy bracket, nearly dropping it. I was about to call the handyman. The old Mia would have outsourced the problem, but I stopped myself. I had conquered a multi-million-dollar corporation. I could conquer a bracket. I paused, put down the bracket, and walked into my home office. I retrieved a small, familiar object from the back of my desk drawer, the first Astra Capital business card Sarah had given me shortly after she stole the job. It was the only remaining physical artifact of the betrayal. I held the card in my palm. For years, it had been a psychological weapon, a reminder of the humiliation that fueled my climb. Now it was just a piece of flimsy cardstock. I walked back into the living room, placed the card on the floor, and brought down the small hammer I was using for the bracket. The card crumpled instantly. I bent down, picked up the bracket, and expertly secured it to the wall. The shelf was solid, permanent, and entirely my own doing. That evening, Alex and I were sitting on our balcony watching the sunset. I told him about the final symbolic act of destroying the card. You know, the funny thing is, the job Sarah stole, that $120,000 $1,000 analyst job, that was never the dream, Alex, I confessed. The dream was always the power to choose. The power to define my own worth instead of letting a flawed system do it for me. And you have it, Alex said, taking my hand. You didn't just win the fight, you redefined the game. I did. I agreed, a feeling of deep peace settling over me. Suddenly, Alex stood up and pulled me toward the railing. Look, Mia, over there. He pointed toward a new high-rise under construction downtown, a massive tower that had just been topped off. It was the future headquarters of Ava Sharma's decentralized lending platform, one of the Ignition Fund's biggest successes. That entire project is being funded by an ethical consortium that Synergy helped assemble, Alex said. That tower is taller than the old Astra building, and it's a direct result of the focus you put on creation, not competition. I looked at the massive, gleaming tower. It wasn't my building, but it was my legacy. It represented the ethical future I had fought to build. I turned back to Alex, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. I need to make one final personal move. I said, my voice steady. I'm not doing this for a contract or a title or revenge. I'm doing it for my life. I didn't need to ask him a question. I simply held out my hand, showing him the platinum band I wore. I spent years climbing the corporate ladder alone. I want to build this life with you, Alex. I want to build a real foundation, one that lasts longer than any company and is stronger than any betrayal. Alex didn't need a word of explanation. He smiled, pulling me close. The contract is signed, Mia. I love you. The journey from betrayal to power and from power to purpose was finally complete. I had earned the right to stand tall, not because I stood on Sarah's failure, but because I had finally built an unshakable foundation of integrity and love. I was Mia Chen's CISO mentor and soon-to-be wife. The victory was final, and it was entirely my own.